So, welcome. This discussion will be in English. So, let me welcome, please, our honored guests. First, Dominika Kasprowicz from Vila de Cusa, Poland. Anna Štičková from Czech Republic. And our dear guest, Ferenc Czinki from Hungary. And discussion will be held by Eva Lavríková. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. My name is Eva Lavríková. I'm not only the leader of discussion, but also partly Slovak side or Slovak part of this discussion. I work at the City Library. I work also as a translator, so book market or literature in general is also a big part of my life, and also big part of life of our guests. When I was listening to Ferci, it was like, okay, so now he starts to talk about this really nice idea behind the name, Vesby and so on. I was like, okay, so this is like, it's impossible to translate, and I'm really glad I don't need to translate this part because there's play on words on so many levels. But the most important for us here is that we are talking about connections and about how we can maybe help each other or how we can learn from each other. Because we in Slovakia, at least, we actually kind of learned, but the bad way, I would say mostly. We're talking with Ferenc before the start, like where is the Hungarian culture and how we are really, really quickly getting there in such a short time. But I really hope we are not talking about pessimistic scenarios and not about just bad things, because I think there is like also a lot of nice things, many nice things which happens, and many important things that happens or can happen. And let's talk about how we can maybe help them. So my first question is, in general, a situation in culture, in literature, but in culture in general, in Slovakia is quite complicated. As I told, it's getting really bad really quickly. So I would like to know, in your countries, Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, like how is literature or culture flourishing? Because I know it's flourishing. Is it thanks to government, or is it despite the government? So maybe, Ferenc, you can start, since I mentioned you already.
I guess it's despite the government. You know, like 15 years ago, when this government came to power, they started like a very slow but long taking over the culture by taking over all the cultural institutes, putting their people there. And it was like a very, very slow process. So at first time, we didn't realize what was happening. And it took them like 15 years to complete this kind of mission. And we cannot talk about like actual censorship in Hungary in case of literature papers and newspapers or media. They chose like a different path, a different way to do that. It's like autocracy 2.0. It's a new era autocracy. They're simply buying platforms, using their financial power to take over the platforms where you could act your freedom of speech or freedom of art. It's very tricky, and it's very hard to fight against it, because they are telling that it's a democracy, it's a capitalism. These companies bought these platforms, and then we're done. But what they are not telling is that they're using public money to buy these independent platforms, and then start using them against the independent artists and independent media personalities. So it's very, very tricky, very, very hard. But as I can hear, that you here in Slovakia learned the blueprint and did this in record time. So congratulations. It was very surprising for me. And this is one of the reasons I'm here, to talk about, what happened there in Hungary and what might be the get out from this situation.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, right now we are kind of like two peas in a pod, so that's nice to be there. How is the situation in Poland? Maybe I don't know. I have to admit I don't know that much about it, because when I think of Poland and literature and culture, it's more for me personally. I mean, it's more about like concrete authors or genres or situations and or festivals or very like nice and positive concrete examples. But how is the situation in general in Poland?
So let me start with saying where I do stand, so you have a better overview why I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm a director of the cultural institution of the international scope. I've been in this position for over 10 years. Wow,
Yeah,
thank
you.
It works. Over 10 years, so it gave me a chance to witness and to get through various modus operandi when it comes to cultural policy in Poland. I'm also a scholar, academic, working with political communication and disinformation as topics. So from those two perspectives, I would say that, of course, Poland is a big country with a big market when it comes to literary field. We have a long-standing tradition of writers, poets, translators being an active members of or participants of the public debate, no matter which government was in power. And answering directly your question, does literature flourish against or thanks to governments? I would say both. In the Polish case, almost 10 years ago, when the new cultural policy strategy has been adopted by the radical right or more populist radical right government, was slightly different. What we have seen was building up from the scratch the parallel world, parallel system and network of institutions. It wasn't about closing, it wasn't about taking down certain directors. In some cases, yes, but speaking generally, it was more about building up a new parallel cultural, literary ecosystem. And this strategy, for many reasons, can be seen as a smart one, because in spite of the fact that 2 years ago the government had changed after 2 terms, this parallel ecosystem is there. So it became a nest, it became a support system for those who feel this doctrine, this right-leaning paradigm as theirs. And the result is that both in society and culture, what we live in now is like pillar society. We know this concept from the Netherlands, the pillar country, the pillar society. And in Poland these days, we are getting there. And once the culture is involved, we need to acknowledge that once culture is on board of this pillar society praxis, it's getting really serious. Because what culture gives you, it gives you an axiomatic, axiological underpinning of any actions. It gives you emotions. It steers emotions. It gives you authorities. There are so very little authorities these days. And it gives you an illusion of truth. So this is a different path, and in spite of that, it has happened, the big change, it has happened in Poland 2 years ago in political sense. We are still facing the legacy of the radical change that occurred over 8 years.
Well, it's good to hear that it can actually be a part of the pillar the pillar part. I like that because right now we are taking in Slovakia, we are taking the downhill, the Hungarian way, so maybe we can take uphill the Polish way later on. Or we are trying already now. We'll talk about it later on. And how is the situation in Czech Republic? There is the election coming, right, this autumn. So there is huge expectations, as I figure, and also what it can mean for culture, and not only for culture, obviously. So how is the situation now, and what are your expectations? Or I think you just need to start to talk, and he needs to figure out which one are you using.
So hello, good morning. I think we are now, as you said, in some term of expectations and being a bit scared because of the election, which will be in October, and I think we are on a crossroad. And after the election, we will see if we will follow you or Hungary in a way which you described, or it will be, I think, in some same situation. But especially in literature, we are also in expectations because we will be the guest of honor in Frankfurt 2026. So I think this is the biggest and very, very huge opportunity for literature in many years for Czech literature. But I think it will be really hard if the political situation will change. And I think we are pretty sure that the political situation will change after the election. So now I think it's some vacuum, and we're just waiting what we will be face after election.
I know that this is the difficult question and even more difficult answer, but are you in any way preparing for the worst or for the bad turn on? Because I think that one of the big problems of our situation it's completely reactive most of the time, because it all in Slovakia everything happens so fast, so quickly, and we just are reacting, which obviously proactive and reactive approach has some it's not that easy, and it's very limited space, both time wise and when we talk about people and their capacities. So are you in a way preparing for the worst?
I would love to say that we are preparing, but I think that we are not, and the reason is that we don't have the recipes or the ways, because we could follow you or Hungarian way or in some way Polish way, but the problem is that the Czech culture, not just literature, is really exhausted after COVID, after pandemic, and it's not just pandemic. The problems in Czech cultural sector were accumulating many years, almost 30 years. And during the pandemic, it just was accelerated, and after pandemic and after 30 years of not really good cultural policy for performing arts and literature, and after the war in Ukraine, the sector is really exhausted, and I think we don't have any capacity to trying to be prepared what will be after the elections.
Yeah, I understand the capacity is a big problem. Dominika?
Yeah. We are discussing or touching upon different aspects of the very wide topic of culture. When I think of the question of yours, this fancy word of resilience comes to my mind. And when I think of resilience, not necessarily towards politics, but towards any kind of challenges, I think of a people, and I think of what kind of mindset and attitude is needed so you stay creative and stay brave and stay active. And this is not... Okay, to cut the long story short, Poland is this type of country, this type of political system within which cultural policy has been for years important. We spent quite a big share of the public budget, of the country budget, on culture. When the former government was in power, the budget was even higher. They were investing in cultural institutions, museums, galleries, and other big symbolic endeavors. But what we have learned on the way was, and now I'm getting back to resilience and the sources of positive attitude, we learned that what really mattered, of course, the public money, it's not bad to have some, but you have it or you don't. And this fluctuation of political landscape is so hectic in the past years that what I see in many of the subsectors, in many institutions and collectives and NGOs, is that alternatives, ways of survival actually had to be developed. And it comes together with some sources of inspiration and some sources for this positive attitude. And I will not be very original saying that it's about the local communities, but it's also in the Polish case. I know that it's not necessarily so very much applicable to Slovakia or the Czech Republic. It's about cities and local governments, because it's mostly about the central budget of Ministry of Culture. But if you look into exact numbers, these are the towns and cities who actually cover most of the costs of participation in culture. When it comes to the subsidies for literature, translation, and writers, again, it's both local and central. So the role of the cities and local communities is not to be overseen. And the last point here, when it comes to resilience and finding the source for inspiration and way to keep going, of course, these are people. And this interconnectivity within the sector. This is something that really is worth investing in. Come on, the translators, writers, these are people who like to be alone. I mean, okay, it's an overgeneralization, but you know what I mean. This is a very solitary type of occupation. But if there are spaces, institutions, events, places where you can at least try to get them together and to create a long-lasting network of trust in the bad times, it can be really rewarding. And I know what I'm saying because we belong to such a network. And that was our modus operandi, how to survive the 8 years when we were not exactly the most popular and most subsidized institution. So, local level, network of people, and looking after people and their well-being. Because at the end of the day, this is all that matters in terms of creativity.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to remind that Dominika is also director of Villa Decius, Villages, which also, amongst other things, gave a literary residency for authors, for creators, writers, poets, and so on. So that's what, amongst the other things, she was talking about building up a local community and these things. Ferenc, did you want to say some more? Because I could see you reacting in a way.
Well, of course. I wanted to connect to what Dominika said like 2 answers ago about how these populist rightist governments build up like a parallel cultural system and like a parallel culture. But I got good news about it from Hungary, because after like 15 years, it seems like that they are running out of human resources. So it's not endless. Because I think that obviously culture should be independent and liberal by its nature. So it's very hard to find people on the conservative side. So now they're running out of human resources. They're running out of people who they could put into different positions, and they could give the different awards and prizes. So nowadays, I'm going to give you some hint, some behind-the-curtain stories about Hungarian culture. Now these people who are running the parallel cultural system are started contacting me, like in the background, please nominate people to these awards, because we are out. We have no one. And like many years ago, our society decided that we are not going to nominate anybody for state awards and prizes. But now they are trying to find me and please nominate like normal people to these awards, which is like sounds absolutely crazy for me. So I think this described the situation really well. And Poland is very different, because we were talking about the cities and the local municipals. They have much more power in Poland than they have in Hungary, especially in the last couple of years, since we have a liberal mayor of Budapest. And it's a big problem for the government. And because of that reason, they started changing the municipal law and the municipal system, and they started taking away power and money from the cities. So there's no option anymore. If you're not getting state funds, you could turn to your local city or local municipal. It's not an option anymore, because they took away most of the power and the money from the cities.
Yeah, I'm really glad, and thank you for this mentioning the local government or local fundings, because the situation in Slovakia right now is that I think that it, amongst the other things, that the Fond na podporu umenia, this program funding the most of the culture in Slovakia, it's very quickly going down underwater. And it just showed that most of the organizations or of institutions or even like just cultural persons or groups, they are just working with money from this program. And when it's going underwater, it's just showing that the local governments, for example, has no plan B, and they have to react, because which it means also in Bratislava, it means that if we as a city organization, city cultural organization, don't get money from this program, we have almost no money for creating the culture, and we are a culture institution. So it also raises up the questions. It's like the mostly one source of the money, and when this source is going down, like state program, because of the government, it's a huge problem, and we should think about like how to fund the culture from private sources, from local sources, and I mean also local sources as a municipality. So this is a big part of the problem, I think, and it's showing in Slovakia to be quite big these days.
I'm really grateful that you touched upon that topic of money. By the way, back in Poland, in Krakow, there is this saying that we talk about everything but money. and it's so, comfortable, and it's so handy in the field of culture that you don't feel like discussing money. But we started discussing money, especially in the field of literature and authorship. This is when if you would be asking me what's the biggest issue these days, what's the hot potato topic around the public debate when it comes to literature and field of literature, this is money. This is the author's right and the remuneration of authors themselves. It started recently with a book that became bestseller, that, by the way, is about history of women in Poland in the interwar period and before, about the poverty, about the intergenerational traumas, and it became a huge success, a bestseller of the decade. And then the author of the book, she asked the publisher to remunerate her a little better, that it was in a contract, and actually the law gives her this right to ask for a higher remuneration in case the book is selling really well. I'm oversimplifying, but basically it was about that. And then the debate started. If you add to that the AI that has been trained with a huge collections of creative works of writers and translators and poets, then you have the topic that also needs to be discussed, and actually that can be part of the solution when we ask or when we talk about the resilience of cultural sector and writers themselves. Because it has to be acknowledged as an important part of the market, important part of the labor market, an important part of the cultural sector, the work that has been done by this group of people.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that, Anna, you want to add something.
No, I just totally agree with Dominika, but I just a bit laughed because we had some survey that 60% of our authors didn't receive any salary or any royalties in Czech Republic. So I think we are at the beginning of the discussion, because I really love liked what you said, that the salary is right of the author. And I think we are not here yet in Czech Republic. Some recognition that it could be paid if you write something. It's not high in Czech Republic for now. So we are not prepared for the situation which will become after the election, I think. But I just want to say that which is really, really important on literature is that literature is in her DNA based on connections, on the connections among writer and readers, among readers and among publishers and booksellers and so on. And I think this is the strength of the literature. It's you said that work for writers are really like you are working alone, but you are still part of some network, and this is really, really important. And I think this is which makes literature against AI, against social media really strong. And this is for me the resilience of the literature.
Thank you. I just want to add that Anna Štičková is not only a writer, but he's also academic, and her subject, if I figured it right, is book market, how it works in Czech Republic, and about what you are talking also about working conditions of book professionals. So this comes from a person who knows quite a lot, I would say, about the topic. So thank you for adding the commentary about situation in Czech Republic. And I think that in Slovakia it's also like that. Like writer is not really a job. It's nice hobby you have in Slovakia. So yeah, I can see that you want to add something as well.
Well, of course, it's important to know about our society, that we are supporting hundreds of literature events a year. And it became like a part of the income of many writers, many of our members. We have 400 members, and in Hungary, the royalties after book selling are very low. It's very hard to make a living as a writer. So we are supporting hundreds of events a year, and we help to make a living to hundreds of writers from our members. And when I'm complaining about money, I'm not complaining about my salary or my assistant's salary and stuff like that. I'm complaining for money for writers to make at least a decent living. So with this system, we are trying to correct the overall system and trying to help our members. So that's why it's so important for us to get like real funding. And yes.
I just wanted to add that currently within the Polish Ministry of Culture, there is a new advisory body that is constituted with experts and writers whose task is to provide recommendations for the new set of laws or amendments to the existing legal framework that would acknowledge and enhance the status of an artist and writer in particular. And we hope for some results to come soon. One of the members of this advisory body is the director of the Book Institute, so the institution that is responsible of promoting the Polish literature abroad, and the former director of the biggest literary festival, colleague of ours, who gives us, some hope that this group of people is being threatened seriously. So I don't want to be too optimistic. I'm also not a naive person, but at least this is a kind of breakthrough. Let's see what happens next, if this is a kind of model that can be followed.
Thank you. I think that the big part of the problem when we talk about money in culture, or how much money and to whom and where from are coming when it comes to culture, goes hand in hand with how culture and literature is perceived in society, how society thinks how important the culture actually is. And since I know that you, Dominika, you also work with political communications, populism, and so on, and we know that language co-creates reality. So how government or politicians talk about culture, how society talk about culture, how is this situation, specifically in Poland, but later on also Hungary and Czech Republic. So, because, for example, just when all these problems comes up, so when cultural professionals are trying to show that this is a big part of a problem, so politicians and then society as well, some media as well, unfortunately, are, for example, telling those are just those actors who actually has loads of money and they are just screaming we don't care about them. They have nothing in common with us, so why should we care? It's changing now because the problems are much more wider and it shows on different levels now. But in generally, it's a year ago, it was like that, so.
I would answer by saying that culture as such always has been a battlefield, a political battlefield. It has been acknowledged by politicians as an important part of the political struggle. And it was never overlooked. Of course, different governments, different ministers of culture would be approaching the topic differently. When it comes to society, but the culture itself And the debate over culture actually in Poland falls into this very known and kind of old school and boring dichotomy in between the liberal artes liberales, and the culture that serves the nation, the nationalist, ethnocentric view of culture and its role. And we are bouncing from one pole to another over the last 30 years. When it comes to society, what is really interesting and worrying at the same time is, for example, the very low rate of readership. We, in spite of being a big country with big literary field, with plenty of names that are selling around the world also, Nobel winners and so on, we have a very low readership rate. And this is one of the biggest challenges of the day. And secondly, the challenge we face is the cleavage in between the cities and the peripheries. Because approach to culture, involvement in culture, and the view of a culture differs so much in between those two. That's why I would say that it became recently a priority of the Ministry of Culture, but also local governments, to invest into local cultural, small cultural centers to make it livable, alive again. So those two things.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that also here it's a dichotomy about people who care about culture, and they're mostly surrounded in cities or connected in cities. And the others are like, yeah, well, we have the real problems, so why should we care? Which is very tricky, right?
Let me jump in. I would not entirely agree with you by saying that there is a cleavage. I didn't mean that there is, much bigger attendance in culture in the big cities and there is none on the peripheries, because culture is everywhere. It's maybe a local culture, folk culture, it's about traditions, it's about, different types of activities, singing and knitting, but it is there. It's more about the public attention, public support, and acknowledgement of the role culture plays differently, but still, importantly, both in so-called peripheries and in big cities where the high culture, of course, is much more visible.
Thank you for that. Ferenc?
Well, in Hungary, politicians do like to talk about culture. I prefer when they don't. It's much better for us. But they keep talking about culture like all the time. Because we have this tradition that the ideas and the words and the political opinion of writers are somehow very important. I don't know why. But that's like a real tradition. And we call it like the social responsibility of intellectuals and writers. And we always feel that we need to form our opinion and talk about our opinion in different political situations. And the politicians know that as well. So that's why they're so focused on us, and that's why they're talking so much about politics. It happened during the socialist times. Writers were very important part of the independent intellectual movements. Lots of writers sat in the first independent parliament in 1990. And don't forget that our 1848 Great Revolution against the Habsburgs was started by a poet. So they always remember that.
I think that in Czech Republic we have to see some difference between political speech and the reality. Now, before the elections, culture is part of the political speeches. sorry.
Species.
Not species. But the reality after election and during the period between elections is really different. I think in Czech Republic the situation is that we have a lot of castles, sightseeing, and so on. We have a huge network of these buildings. It's really expensive to keep alive. And after the Velvet Revolution, we tried to save so many buildings after the 40 years of not really good behaving to these buildings and so on, and we a little bit forgot that there is also some life culture, and now we are paying the price for 30 years of not paying attention to alive artists and so on. We still don't have enough part of the state budget to be dedicated, 1% of the state budget to be dedicated to cultures. It's some commitment which every single party will set to their programs before the elections, and it's not fulfilled during any government. And now we are just going back in a cultural budget. In the last 2 years, we were saved after the Next Generation EU programs and so on, after the recovery programs by European Union. But the Czech budget for culture is still under the 1%. So I think this is problem, and we also have really huge network of libraries. We have one of the biggest networks of libraries in Czech Republic, which is really expensive. It's amazing because we basically have library in every single village, but it's really expensive. We have huge cultural centers from socialist era in every city, every small city or every bigger village has some cultural center, and now I think we are in some way to find out how to calibrate the support for every part of this cultural sector, and I think we are not. We didn't have or haven't find the solution now, and we will see what will be after election.
I think that we have had this kind of like network from older era, I would say, but it's not that much used it's not at the same level in all of the villages or towns or cities, and somewhere there just ruins in the middle of the village or the town, which is not used for real culture. And by real culture I mean not selling melons in front of it or something like that.
But if I may add something, I'm from West Bohemia, from Sudety, basically. And now I see, or I'm aware of some trend that many people from this really still problematic regions, really abandoned regions still. We are really Pragocentric country. And I'm now realizing it because I moved from Prague to Brno, and I was really surprised how everything is done in Prague. And nobody is aware about some, for example, Karlovy Vary or something behind the Pilsen or something. But now I see many people, not just young people, but around 30s, 40s, that they are moving to these abandoned regions, and they are trying to do something in culture. They are buying some old castles, old buildings, and they are trying to do some culture centers here. They are returning to the region and preparing some festival every year, and so on. And I think this is new. This is something new in Czech culture, and it's really important. And it's what you said about the local communities. And maybe they are not living here for the whole year, but they are trying to do something here, and this is really important.
Yeah, I can only agree, and we know this phenomenon, I would say, from Slovakia as well. It's happening, and it's really good. I'm just kind of afraid how it will go on now without the Fond na podporu umenia, without this state program, which is going down. But at least we know there are people around the whole country which are willing and capable and able to create whatever they feel need for in those parts of the country.
Yeah, I think, but this is the opportunity for the local city halls and so on for supporting, and I think this is the way how to find the other ways of financial support, because you can ask the local municipality, and you are not not totally don't need the Arts Council Fond na podporu umenia, but you can also diverse your financing, I think.
Yeah, I think that we are at this point, like we need to think about it quite. It's quite important right now for us. But I also want to talk about. Thank you for the word resilience. By the way, I was thinking of the same word a lot when I was reading the discussion. I was thinking about the discussion. I was thinking, yeah, it's a huge part of the topic is the resilience. Even though in Slovak language it was written about Rezistencia, and right now in Slovakia, I think also Rezistencia is a huge part of the cultural movement, I would say, because now the last year or so we have those many events and small festivals and so on happening all the time. We call them protests now. So we are protesting all the time with all kind of culture involved, and it's also this open culture movement who creates those protests, and we are protesting about so many things in so many different ways. Also like some guerrilla actions and so on and so on. We know about those, so I don't need to tell more about those. But do you have some movements like this? And I don't mean just right now, but you were talking about like 10 years ago how the situation changed in Hungary. It also took quite a slow time, maybe 10 years. We can talk about this amount of time as well. So do you have like some movements, cultural professionals creating some movement against some guerrilla actions, protests? How is the situation when we talk about this in Poland, in Hungary, and well, also in Czech Republic? You are just getting there, so don't worry, it will come.
Well, there are lots of small independent like movements and societies and communities like on the countryside or in smaller cities, just like in my hometown, and it's very nice and it's very good that they're doing it, and many of those are successful. But I think that their success is a bit misleading, because these small independent local communities should be the additional part of the overall cultural life of a country. And in our case, now it is the only one that works good. So we're kind of laid back a bit because they're working fine. We know that they're going to survive somehow. And we're not trying to deal with the overall problem. So it's a bit misleading. It's nice, but this is not the right way to do a culture of a country.
Thank you. Dominika?
If you would be looking around 10 years back, the two things that caused the biggest mass protests, the protests that actually mattered in terms of a long-term political trends, one of them was a moment when anti-ACTA law was about to be introduced. So basically, the limitation over internet usage. And the second one was about abortion, the women's right. There were initiatives centralized around some topics of culture, but these were mostly situations when some of the big names, directors, were given a sack over the night and replaced by other people who were closer and appointed directly by politicians or by the Ministry of Culture. But these were small, these were local. And considering how big role of culture and literature in Poland we have and still had and we still have, I'm quite surprised that culture is not moving Poland. Probably you've heard this, culture moves Europe. I don't quite see it. Nevertheless, we have a new phenomenon, and these are trade unions. Simple as that. So creative sectors and writers and translators in particular are now forming the organizations or simply forming trade unions. That's main, or whose main goal is to look after the working conditions, remuneration, royalties, and authorship rights, especially in relation with big techs and AI engines.
Yeah, thank you for that. I didn't have time to get there, but I was going to talk about that as well. Also because I think that not only literature like national literature or local literature and writing is important, but obviously international literature or international connections, as we actually can see right here, right now. So it's also a very important part of the vital culture area or landscape, as you told it. And I think that we have really nice examples of that, like book fairs. Book fair in Hungary already. Slovakia was already 2 times as a main guest there. Which, like, when we talk about those connection between the nations. Also, BRaK Festival is also about international literature, international connections, and cultural professionals. And I think it's very important to be, to be in contact and in discussion, in dialogue with other cultural landscapes or areas. Also to learn from each other, maybe. And since we have to stop right here, and I'm sorry for that, because I feel that we just started to talk about so many different and interesting topics, and we could just go on for the whole day. But we have to stop right here. I'm sorry for that. And I see that we are all in black color, like we are sitting at a funeral or something. But I would like to finish with a question which hopefully is not very, very funeral. So what gives you hope in culture, you personally? Like, what gives you hope? I hope it is at least something.
Okay, so in Villa Decius, we host writers, translators, poets from all around the world. And when I see a person coming from Congo, Libya, Syria, with no place to go, that keeps the person that still creates and believes in the power of the word and the power of creativity and keeps hope, I have no reasons to lose mine. Simple.
You are also a board member of akom organization, and I could feel it in this answer, so thank you for that as well.
Yeah, for me it's also people, as Dominika said, and also the literature and the text, and I really love talking about books and texts. And just yesterday I hosted some discussion about Czech awards of literary critics, and it was really inspiring for me. I couldn't say that I can that I agree with everything which they said, but it was really interesting. And these meetings, like today and in next days, during BRaK, it gives me a lot of hope and a lot of sense. And this is the reason why I am staying still in the field.
Thank you, Ferenc.
Well, I think the correct answer is people, words, and connections. That should be the hope. But in my case, it's not about hope because I cannot imagine myself in any other environments than literature. So it's my reality. And I'm getting lots of invitations all over Europe to talk about the situation in Hungary. I call it the complaining tour. And thank you for having me here as well. But I'm just going to tell you one final story. 5 years ago was my first time being invited to talk about the Hungarian situation. It was in Belgrade, and I shared the stage with 4 other people, Romania, Serbia, Poland, and I don't know, someone else. And I was the last one getting a question, or at least I was expecting getting a question. But when they got to me, the moderator said that you are from Hungary. I don't even have a question for you. Talk. So, dear Slovak friends, don't wait for that. Okay, so don't wait for being the one person in the room who everybody is sorry about, because it's not a good feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all my guests. This was Dominika Kasprowicz, Anna Štičková, and Ferenc Czinki.
Thank you. Thank you also.
A toto bola Eva Lavríková z Mestskej knižnice v Bratislave. Thank you all. You were wonderful as always. I have to say that these are our esteemed partners. We love them, our friends, and so on and so on. And I'm really loving the outfits. I actually posted something on Instagram. I tagged all of you saying that this is a Vyšehrad Depeche Mode.